girl, welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with another trope video, and in this one, as you might be able to tell from the thumbnail and the title, I'm talking about cryptids. Okay, so if you don't know what a cryptid is, I can give you some examples. Things like the Loch Ness Monster, the Jersey Devil, things like Sasquatch, things like mermaids, unicorns, any sort of mythical creature that is debatably not existent but shows up in folklore and is just really fun to talk about. I've picked 4 books here. 2 of them do talk about the same type of cryptid, but I did try to get a variety of different cryptids to talk about because it's just so much fun. And honestly, there were so many books to choose from, which I was surprised by before I started searching, I guess, because I had like maybe 2 in my library beforehand, but I found so many it was really hard to actually choose my other 2 picks from. I do usually try to do 2 books that are a little bit older and 2 more modern horror books. This time it didn't quite work out that way. So I'm going to start with the oldest book on this list. This is The Spirit by Thomas Page. This was originally published in 1977. It has been recently republished, or reprinted I guess, by Valancourt Books in their Paperbacks from Hell series. So, it is a book featured in Paperbacks from Hell. So this is a book where we have alternating points of view. One is from a man named John Moon who is following this thing he calls the spirit. And he thinks that he will basically find enlightenment if he follows this creature, catches up to it. He thinks that this creature will lead him to enlightenment. The other person we're following has a much different point of view of this creature, which is basically a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch, a Yeti. His name is Raymond Jason, and he had been part of a team that had been previously attacked by this creature, but it was like, did the creature attack them or did they attack the creature and like the creature reacted, kind of a thing. But basically Raymond Jason is out for revenge and he is trying to trap and kill this thing. I thought this book was pretty good. I really did enjoy John Moon's perspective a lot more than Raymond Jason, just because, I don't know, Raymond Jason was not a very likable person. Like there was just not really very many redeeming qualities about him, although there honestly is not a whole bunch of character development into this. I will say, I think my favorite part of this book was the ending, because this whole time these 2 men are tracking it and we don't really know where it's going, but in the end we do get to see why it's been traveling the way it has and where it's been traveling to. Like, it's not just meandering, it does have a destination, and when we find out what that destination is, I thought that was very interesting. So this one I liked. It was not my most favorite book ever, but it was a really good Bigfoot book and a pretty good vintage horror. Next, I'm going to tell you about the other Bigfoot book I read for this video, and that was Swamp Monster Massacre by Hunter Shea. This one was published in 2012, and I read this on my Kindle. This was much different than The Spirit, but in a really fun way. This was very much action-packed. Let me tell you a little bit about this. So there's this guy named Rooster, and he is doing some drug stuff. They're in like the swampy parts of Florida, and he is trying to run away from some drug dealers he has wronged, and he comes across this like fan boat touristy attraction, and he hijacks a fan boat and gets lost in the Everglades. Eventually he accidentally crashes the fan boat when he runs over a juvenile Sasquatch, and basically the Sasquatch family tries to seek revenge on Rooster and the passengers he basically had kidnapped. This one was everything the title tells you. It had swamp monsters and it was a massacre. It was very gory. And it was just one of those fast-paced books where it's like eating junk food, you know, like there's not really a ton of substance, but it was a lot of fun to read. Rooster, despite being kind of like a bad guy, he does end up being a little bit of a more likable character, and he does some things in the story to redeem himself. You know, it's like, maybe he's not just a bad guy, maybe he's just doing bad things, you know what I mean? So I had a lot of fun with this. It was a quick read, it was fun, and it had lots of guts and blood and booby traps. Next is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira. This was published in 2017, and you might not know, you might know, I don't know. I feel like it's pretty common knowledge if you know about her books, but this is one of Shannon McGuire's pen names. And this is the only one I've read under this pen name, but she does have like a really popular like zombie series and like a, what do they call it? Like an urban fantasy series, but I haven't read any of them. However, I did read this, and it was a pretty thick book, and at times it did feel very long, but I did end up liking it overall. I think this might be a video where like I pretty much liked all the books that I read. So the premise for this is that there is a young woman named Victoria. She is a scientist. She works with ocean life, and a few years ago she lost her sister to this very mysterious boat accident. Her sister was on this boat and they were filming a mockumentary over the Mariana Trench in the middle of the fucking ocean, like the deepest part of the ocean that we know of. Something crazy happened, and all we know is that they said like there were mermaids and the crew was dead. The boat was found just completely abandoned, and we don't know what happened to the crew. So Victoria is part of this new crew that goes out there to film a documentary instead of a mockumentary, and kind of not just document it, but explore the Mariana Trench and try to find these sea creatures again, if they even exist. So we find out that they do exist, and they are terrifying. It is really a fun book. There is lots of science in here that might be pseudoscience, might not be. I don't know. I really like that in a book. However, if you don't, because that is pretty heavily sprinkled throughout the book, but it is not just the same kind of science. There are lots of different scientists working on this boat, so you get a lot of different science. It's really interesting the way that they go about this, and it's really fun when the mermaids are found. That's not a spoiler, I don't think. I mean, this is a book about mermaids, so it wouldn't be a book where they go out and don't find mermaids, right? Anyways, like I said, this felt a little bit long. It was very nearly a 5-star read for me when I read it, but it was just, like the beginning part itself took such a long time to get through. It was like, I just wanted them to get on the GD boat and like go exploring, and it took a long time to be introduced to the characters and all that. But it was a good payoff. I'm very glad I read this, and if you haven't picked it up, I would definitely suggest it. The last book I'd like to tell you about is Night of the Chupacabra by Michael Hebler. This is the first book in a series, and this one was published in 2012. I did not read the whole series. I just read this first book, and honestly, not sure if I'm gonna continue on with the series, but I did end up liking this first book. So this takes place just after the Civil War, and this man named Drake is traveling with his family out west. They're trying to make it to San Francisco, I think. That's not a huge important detail, but they're headed out west. And while on the trail, they are attacked by something, and they don't really know what. And Drake thinks that he might be the only survivor. However, he did see his wife run off into the desert. But at some point he loses her trail while he's trying to track her, and he really doesn't know if she survived or not. But he's basically spent the last couple years after this tragedy trying to find his wife and going from town to town, seeing if anyone knows where she is. So eventually he makes it to this tiny little outpost type of town, and he thinks he may have found signs of his wife, but they're really closed mouth about everything that's going on. And while he's there, the town starts getting attacked by some sort of monster. It's a chupacabra, if you haven't already guessed from, you know, the title of the book. But there's something a little bit special about this chupacabra. It's not just like the, you know, normal feasts on livestock type of chupacabra. It's like a little more sentient, I guess, you know, than like just a wild animal would be, or what I would think a wild animal would be. And it seems to have been following Drake and murdering people that he comes into contact with, kind of. So there is kind of this mystery around like what is going on with this chupacabra thing. Is his wife alive? And why is this town so strange? I liked this book pretty well. The writing was sometimes a little bit heavy-handed with like the westerniness. Like there was lots of dialect that was purposely written out in a westerny way, like lots of dropping the G's on the ends of words, like wrestling and hemming and hawing. I don't know, I can't think of words with ing suddenly. And, you know, lots of things like, well, what are you good for then? And I'm gonna strangle you tonight, and things like that. It was like, it didn't need to be there, I didn't think, for us to know that this is taking place like in a westerny setting. Because, I mean, the guy's riding a fucking horse. He is calling San Francisco Frisco. He is in a saloon. There's a whorehouse. Like, it's like Red Dead Redemption. Did like the setting though. I liked the westerniness of it. Besides like the dialect, that was just a little bit too much. But I did like the setting. However, like the characters were all just kind of okay. They just seemed like people who should be there, I guess, you know what I mean? There was like this special thing about the chupacabra that, of course, I can't tell you because that would be spoiling it. But that was really interesting. They kind of come up with like an origin story for even how the creature became. And yeah, so I thought it was pretty good. Maybe some parts of it could have been shortened up a little bit because there were parts where it got a little bit, it felt like I had to force myself to read through some of it. But, you know, that happens in books sometimes. Overall, I thought it was pretty good. It comes to a point in the ending where it's like, I feel like I have closure and I don't necessarily need to read the rest of the series. So I do enjoy that because then I don't feel obligated to like know what happened. I can just be like, this is it. Thank you, author. But if I choose to, I can continue on. But if I choose not to, then it's okay. I really appreciate when authors do that for their readers. So those are the 4 cryptid reads I picked out for this trope video. And I could probably do like 4 more of these if I wanted to, like back to back to back, because there are so many fun looking cryptid books out there. Hunter Shea in particular seems to write a lot of stuff like that. So, you know, maybe I'll pick up some more of his books. But all in all, I found 2 really good Sasquatch books. I found a good mermaid book, and I found a good Chupacabra book. I will have all of those on my bookshop.org affiliate page if you'd like to check those out. Yeah, I mean, I would recommend all 4 of them, which doesn't happen very often in these videos. So anyways, let me know what your favorite cryptid books are, because I love this sort of stuff. I love cryptids. I love the folklore behind them and the origin stories behind them. And, you know, even if it's not a more mythical origin story, for example, like how the Loch Ness Monster came to be, that's a really fun story, even though, you know, it was mostly fraud. It's still interesting to hear about. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Goodbye.